All right, let's bring in CrossFit's Director of Sport, Dave Castro. Dave, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it. And obviously, we have a lot of questions for you regarding the 2021 season. But just to sort of a macro question here, when you knew that you had to sort of redesign this whole thing, or you guys were going to redesign, what were some of the boxes that you knew that you had to check in order to get this thing back to a place where you were like, yeah, this is what we need to do?
Well, are you speaking in terms of like the actual qualification process to get athletes to the games?
I think so. Yes. I think that, yeah,
Okay.
obviously the games are going to stay the same, but the leading up to it.
Yeah. So the way it was in the past couple of years, I believe, was a mess, not by anybody's fault in terms of the event organizers, but in how essentially from our end, we put it out there and didn't have much cohesion or organization or storyline to the whole qualification process. And there was multiple ways to get there, and it just wasn't clean. And by my nature, I respect and appreciate things that have a start and have an end and have a nice storyline throughout the middle. I mean, you look at most sports, we're just talking about football, like you clearly understand the season, you clearly understand the process to advance to the next stage. For 2020 before COVID and in 2019, you couldn't say that about our sport because there was multiple ways to get to the games, even to the point of someone just saying, yeah, you're going to the games. And before we had that, so it was a matter of getting something back that made it look more like a sport that we can be proud of and a sport that we understand, and kind of capture some of the things we did learn that worked well and some of the things that made sense from the organization from these 2 years that I'm being critical of. From the 2 years that I'm being critical of, there was actually a lot of things that were opportunities to learn from and grow off of. And I think we tried building a season that captured some of that. So, conceptually we had an idea, but then we talked to a lot of people. We talked to a lot of the event organizers, a lot of athletes, a lot of our partners, and kind of just wanted to get a sense of what was important to everybody and some of the things that there was a consistent theme across. And in doing that, we definitely didn't make something that makes everyone happy. And of course you're not going to, but I think we hit a lot of pieces that people talked about, even if they didn't convey in the way that we expressed it in the application of the season.
And so it's kind of looking at the season, a lot of the, I guess, the framework and the structure of the season as far as like the wireframe for it was posted today. And starting with the Open moves back, to March. It was talked about, basically providing some opportunity for some restrictions and things to get flowing as far as like the response to the pandemic and pushing past it here in the States and elsewhere. I'm curious why the decision to go with 3 weeks in particular. That was also your clue on social media, and 3 is also the month of March. So I'm also expecting I'm also expecting a good birthday gift because the first workout is the day after my birthday, Dave. So a lot of pressure. But
awesome.
Talk about the decision for 3 weeks in particular.
Well, so in a lot of this, in a lot of the planning, Eric and I were talking, and he was really pressing on, we have to take COVID in mind, as he should be, and as we should all be thinking about in terms of planning this out. And looking at sliding the date to the right and looking at accommodating affiliates and gyms in this environment. And so we looked at moving to the right. And as I was also thinking towards like, hey, well, how can we help gyms, or how can we make this less of a burden? This notion came of, well, what if we just did 3 weeks of the Open? And so, because here's the thing, we all know this, like the Open is amazing, but 5 weeks is tough. It's tough on us as athletes, and it's really tough on the gyms as essentially event organizers for each week for their affiliates. So I started really, because of this idea that it would be less of for those gyms who are open and they're open in this chaotic time, it would be less of a burden for them. And actually, so like I'm thinking of this at this point as something we're doing this year. But actually, it could end up being a proof of concept for future years. I mean, we could see, even when you think about your family and friends or people you know who casually do CrossFit, hey, sign up for the open. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to do that. Well, it's 3 weeks. Okay, well, I can maybe I'll commit to 3 weeks of engaging in this rather than 5 weeks. So even though this is kind of part of our COVID plan, I believe there might be something to it for the future, and we'll see what the response is overall after it's over.
Yeah. Does that also mean that, like, testing wise, there's a possibility for, and I don't want to cheat, you don't have to give away the farm, but I think the natural inclination from the community is that, we could be getting a 15.1 and 15.1A type situation where, because it's condensed, we might get more tests to still kind of reach that same level as far as the filtering process is concerned.
Yeah, all things are on the table as far as the tests go. So, but then you have to look. So you look at the calendar that we put out and some of the things we talked about. Basically, a week and a half or a couple of weeks after that's over, there's what we're calling the quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. And so the quarterfinals are going to be in a weekend and multiple tests, to where these athletes who are going to the next stage have an opportunity to be further tested and with maybe a little more comprehensive or a little more tests in a condensed period to screen them to the next level. I'm really excited about that piece too.
Yeah. How is this broken out? Because under the old model, it was you by region, and then you would, the top people in each region would advance. Has that changed? And if so, how?
Yeah. So it has changed. It's not regionals, or it is using a region-like format. We haven't put out all the word there yet. We'll probably announce that soon and what it looks like. But it's going to be based off of areas in the world, but already defined by society, essentially. And we'll have more on that shortly.
So then when you talk about a 10% number, that will be the top 10% in each region, or will that be the top 10% or each whatever geographic boundary you have?
Yeah, that's a great question. It'll be the top 10% of each as we're looking at it now, of each geographic area.
Okay. So then it's based on, so I understand this correctly. If you base it on the amount of people that would be participating in the open in that boundary, and then you would take.
So let's say the U.S. was a region and there was 100,000 athletes that competed there. 10,000 would advance to the next stage.
Okay, that's where you draw the line. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I think you teased it in the last interview we did. Effectively, representation as far as is dictated on participation. So
yeah,
so the more people that are involved, the more athletes you get to send on, which makes a lot of sense. Cool. And so I'm curious, as far as the stage after that is the semifinal stages. I assume that the selection process for those semifinals is ongoing, but is there anything in particular as far as criteria is concerned for what you're looking for in CrossFit event partners to be able to host one of those 10 events now?
Well, at this point, we're choosing from people who've been in the sanctional family, and so people who have some sort of experience. We're not taking people that are brand new or have not run events before. So we're looking in the ecosystem, and we're looking for some of the expertise that existed in these previous few years. So, and then we sent out basically some forms and some information they had to fill out, facing an application, and our team's going through them currently, and we'll narrow them down because we've had a lot of interest. And the reality is some people won't be able to be at semifinal this year, but we still, even if someone's not able to work in our semifinal format, we still want to work with some of these partners, potentially in outside events or supporting their event as a CrossFit event, but maybe outside of this game season, which is okay because we have the game season open to the games and then the semifinals in the middle. But there's going to be a lot of opportunities outside of that for other events to exist in the ecosystem that are, partnered with us or working with us.
In the past, athletes, basically their regional was predetermined. They knew where they were going before the open ended. How is that, if at all, changed now in 2021?
Okay, so there's some creative. We have a creative format put in place for that. That'll be pretty unique, and not ready to talk about that yet. But we'll have an announcement soon on that.
Just enough of the breadcrumbs to,
Yeah.
to keep us nibbling. I love it. And so one of the things that another announcement that immediately stood out was the return of the Affiliate Cup. So we talked about that in our last interview as well. But you also mentioned that there may be an avenue for some of the super teams and things like that. Where does that stand right now as far as affiliate? Is the Affiliate Cup going to be basically what we were used to in the past as far as criteria for determining teams, and then what will happen with the super teams?
So the Affiliate Cup will, sorry, pop down on my phone. It's going to be very similar to how it was in the past in terms of teams, and there's not going to be super teams at this stage. Some of the things we're looking at for super teams are competitions after outside of this game season, where maybe there's some super team competitions. But at this stage, I think it's a high priority of ours to kind of engage and fire up the base and the affiliates and make them feel like they're part of this competition. Because I think we saw it in our numbers, and I believe, like, especially with super teams, there was a lot of affiliates and a lot of smaller gyms who are just like, we don't even have a chance. These guys are all forming up and they're dominating because they're the best athletes in the world that are creating these teams. And so it was discouraging to some of the local teams, especially if you didn't have, Rich Froning and China on your team. But now you'll have an opportunity to advance and play on in some of these additional stages. And as you see, we announced too, we have a quarterfinals for teams. Mm-hmm. So think of that as like similar to the team series in terms of programming. So that weekend, now, instead of doing individual events, they will do team events to advance to the next stage, which is really cool.
Yeah. Love that. How do you police that then? Because in the past, before the super team became a thing, people would, move to a gym and set up residence and be like, I work out there all the time. And that's kind of how they got around the rule.
Our team worked on, they've worked with actually the athlete council and talked to the athlete council about some alternate ways to handle that. I'm not sure where we've ended up on that decision yet, but I'll let you guys know once we do, or we'll probably put it out soon. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what the answer is on that yet. The team's looking into all options. Okay. Because that is a good question, and it is the policing aspect of is always it was a drag then, and it would be a drag now. So, you hate having to police. And interestingly, when we were in that mode, we had constant complaints of people who were having athletes come in and essentially undercover creating super teams. But I'll see what the team's come up with so far on this topic.
And so one of the other competition stages, I guess you could even call it maybe the fifth stage, but it's a little bit isolated, is the last chance qualifier. And a lot of people may not remember, but that was actually a part of the CrossFit system back in 2009.
Yeah.
A podium athlete, Tommy Hackenbrook, made it to the games through the last chance qualifier. Why was that on the table, back on the table now this year? And maybe what are some plans or hopes for that being included in this system at this point in time?
Well, I think that it gives it creates a little more drama, and it gives athletes that were just on the bubble an additional opportunity. So let's say in any given area we're taking, or any given event of the 10 we've announced, we're taking 5 from an event. And let's say someone finishes 6. And this has happened at regionals. It happened all the time, where the 6th place or the 7th place finisher was like really good and just like had one error, and everyone's like, oh, that person should really be there. You'd hear that a lot about 6 or 7. You wouldn't hear that too often about 9, 10, or 11. Once you're in that realm, people understood, you didn't deserve to be there. So now, and this is a lesson learned from regionals, is like, okay, well, why not have an additional test for that group of people who are just outside of a qualifying spot to try one more time to really prove that they belong on the big stage. And so I think it's cool. It's a cool piece to the storyline. and it'll create some amazing drama. The future of that is potentially, and we even looked at this year, but I think this year we're going to keep it online. But the future of that is an actual in-person test too, which would be very exciting and a cool event to go to. So what we're thinking is for every one of these events, the people that are on the outside, the top 3 right on the outside of qualifying, will get to advance to this stage. So it's also like, it's not like you can have been sick or not done the semifinals. You still have to have gone through the semifinal process to get to this last chance qualifier.
I'm going to put in the request now. Make it in person in Vegas. That just feels like the place that it needs to be, you know?
Yeah. Dave, we lost
for
your
sure.
video, but when you look at the semifinal events, will you standardize the programming for that, or will the event organizers be able to program their own events? I think you're muted. Working on some technical difficulties.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, we got you.
Not ready to commit to an answer, but probably won't standardize.
Really?
Leaning towards that. We'll oversee and sign off on and approve, but probably won't standardize. It just gives the event organizers a little more creativity, gives them the ability to use their local environment, let's say, a little more freely. If you want to have a run, we don't have to try to standardize runs across all these events. So leaning towards not standardizing.
But there will still be, what it sounds like, there'll still be some sort of framework for, you're
yes,
going to test
absolutely.
these areas and make sure that, that there's still
for example, like we won't allow, one event wouldn't have all 3-minute workouts that are all Fran-like for 6 or 7 tests. Like there's got to be a balance, and it's got to be a comprehensive test of fitness by our definition and by our measure.
Is that then aligned with your definition of fitness, in that people will be taking a different test to get to the end stage?
What do you mean?
So in the hopper model, for example, when you go to your level 1, they talk about if we give, we put out all these, we pull out all this stuff of the hopper, and then we get a group of people and they all go through these events. And then whoever does the best is the fittest. Well, now you're kind of comparing apples and oranges, because one guy may have done 6 events to get to the games. Another guy may have done 5, and they're going to look completely different.
But even in number of events, so here's the level we'll probably take this when I say we'll sign off. Like, yeah, exactly that. You have to have 6 events. 2 of the events have to be couplets. One couplet has to be 3 to 4 minutes. The other couplet has to be 9 to 12 minutes. There has to be one chipper of 15 to 20 minute duration. So, I mean, I'm saying they're going to have freedom, but I'm thinking with some very pointed direction to eliminate what you're saying. So, hey, yeah, they might not have all done thrusters and pull-ups, but they all did very similar demand in time domain and in movement and in total volume across all the tests.
Okay.
So looking at the schedule, because in the announcement, in the press release, there was the full slate of dates. As far as dates go, we're returning back to a regional style date format with the semifinals being collected over a shorter period of time. Was that something that was important to you guys to kind of get back to kind of condense the season, and what was kind of the decision process behind that?
Yeah, to kind of create this season that has a flow and that isn't 365 days, because that's essentially what was going on in the last couple of years. There were people that were qualifying for the games, not having done the Open before the Open even started. And the thing is, this season should start and end in this, call it brief period. It's not brief, March through August. And then we have plenty of time in this off season to create other events, to create other series, to create other seasons. And that's the exciting part about all of this is, especially under the new leadership with Eric, is, we're not, in years past, as you guys know, like expanding and growing the sport wasn't really looked upon highly,
It's
but
fine.
now it is. Yeah. So you think about it, if the game season starts in March and ends in August, September through December, September through January, September through February is this blank canvas that we have a lot of options to paint on. And so that's exciting. So that's a unique, like, I don't think of the game season being constricted as eliminating opportunities or options for the rest of the year. I think of it as like, wow, think of all the things we can do once it's over. So take someone like Matt Frazier or some of these athletes, or all of these athletes. They can focus on like, hey, Matt just wants to win the game and get his big prize from that, all of his bonuses and endorsements from Nike and everyone else. He can just go hard March to August, get what he needs done. And then for the rest of the year, if he wants, he can take off, and or a bunch of these other paint strokes we put out there, he can participate in or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm excited about. And that's why, and so my point is, if the game being entirely year round actually limits us in the creativity for some of these other things outside of the season. Also, to go to even talk further to that, so think of this: the games March to August done. Even so, Matt and Tia, they could win, and then in this super team series we have in the off season, guess who can play in it? People like that. So it's, I believe, creating more opportunities and getting these athletes who want to do more and do more and different, the ability to do that.
Was Madison pretty flexible as far as the dates? Because the dates got moved up a week, and I'd imagine that in this current state right now, event planning for some, for cities and things like that is pretty all over the place. I'm just kind of curious if what dates were explored for the games, assuming that there's still some flexibility.
We looked at a lot of dates. Madison, let me rephrase that, a lot of dates that they had available for us, which wasn't a lot. So they had a few options because they're actually really booked too. So they, even next year at this point, I think a lot of these venues are filling up their schedules because they believe things will be more open. So we had a couple options, and some of the other options they gave us pushed it too far into the year. And doing the games late August, early September, you start talking school year, you start talking, it's a tough time. So with the limited options we did have available, this week made the most sense. And you know what? We've talked a lot internally about this. I don't know if we mentioned it on our announcement. I don't think we do, but I'll say it here. But like, we're committed to those dates, regardless of what's happening in the world. So let's say everything's shut down again, like we did this year, how we kept pushing and, okay, it's not in Madison, it's in Roma. It's okay, it's not on this date. No, we're not going to do that. We're committed to, they're happening the week of July 26th in Madison and or virtually if we have to. But we're not going to mess with the dates again this year for the games.
It looks like
for all of that competition,
okay.
For all of the competition.
It looks like the age groups, so the teenagers and the masters competitions, those will mostly mirror the individuals until the semifinals. Is that the correct assumption?
Yeah, well, so they're going to have you look at that more like the norm. So they're going to do the open, and then they're going to go to their online qualifier, and then they'll go to the games.
Okay.
They will not. Yeah, they are not having the quarterfinal, but they. But the big thing there is, and we didn't announce it, that we're going to take a lot more of them. So yeah, I don't remember the exact number yet, and it might be percentage based also, but it's not going to be 200. We're going to so think of it this way: since the Open is only 3 weeks, for these next stages, we're going to open up the funnel a little more to let a lot more of the competitive people go on to that next stage.
Mm-hmm. I will get a ton of angry direct messages from Masters athletes if I don't ask this, but is there a possibility of seeing their representation at the games for the age groups expanding beyond just the 10 that we saw in 2019?
Yes. Yeah. But I think also we're going to take division by division. We're going to look at that case by case. And I only say that because some of those divisions are really small. Like, so the 35 to 39, basically the 35 to 50, those divisions are really big. There's a lot of people. When you start talking the 50 to 54, 55 to 59, 60 plus, those divisions are smaller in numbers, and some of the smaller divisions, surprisingly, for open participation is the number I'm talking about, is the teenagers.
Yeah.
So those divisions are not big at all. So when we hear that like the masters make up a big bulk or make up almost half of open registrants, it's really the 35 to 49 are carrying the load on that. They're the majority. But so yes, for those groups for sure. I mean, I've even floated, we haven't made the decision yet, but I've even floated 30 or 40. It probably will end up being somewhere back to 20 and maybe 30, but yes, so more than 10 will go to the games.
To piggyback kind of what Tommy said, a lot of times when we talk to masters athletes, they want to be included. You know, they wanted their own in-person regional, so they got as a compromise, they got the online qualifier. Is there a scenario under which maybe they are included in those 10 semifinal events? Because I know in the past that was a logistical nightmare to pull off.
Yeah, not this year, but maybe in the future. So in this year too, is like, here's the other thing we're really contending with, honestly, is this notion of, hey, guess what? In May, are those semifinals even going to be able to happen?
Right.
So this year is like the wrong year for us to, let's say, blow up in-person events, obviously, but we're committed to trying those in-person events. And we have plans if they can't happen. So if they can't happen, we'll take each event case by case. So we have 10 of them that we announced. Let's say 3 of them are in areas that are completely locked down. Well, those 3 will run virtually with their same athletes. So those athletes will compete virtually against each other, not against all 3, but against the ones that were seeded to go to that event. Okay. It's basically, in a nutshell, how we're going to handle that situation.
So it seems like
if events close down.
So it seems like everything's fairly fluid as far as the contingency plans based on region. And I guess that kind of touches on something that I was thinking, that like, you know, this season, like you said, is a little bit of a proof of concept because there's so many things that are potentially changing. But for the most part, this is a structure that your CrossFit is kind of committed to going forward with some of the details, numbers, things like that, potentially being shifted after some feedback this year. Is that correct? Would that be fair to say?
That would be fair to say. And I think it gives us a lot of room to grow. You'll really see that and build off of when we announce the continents and the format. So you'll really see that then, how there is a lot of room to grow off of how we're going forward with and what structure we're using. So, and you know, let's say everything's good in 2022. Maybe there is a scenario where some of these age groups in the Masters do have qualifying events, or we expand some of that, but this year, no.
I know you're short on time. We said 30 minutes, so I'll make this the last question. What is kind of the past year been like for you, going from a system that I know you didn't like, and again, not because it was the event's faults, but just the way it was set up.
Yeah.
To now something that I think we can all agree is better.
Yes, I think it's better. And it's been, so what has it been like for me? It's been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster, especially like some of the leadership changes to include my leadership period. And just all the drama with Greg and all the drama with CrossFit and just kind of surviving through all of it. Interestingly, and luckily, I'm a pretty resilient and tough guy, so I can deal with adversity. And at times I even said, hey, this is even, I've dealt with a lot of online criticism with this mindset. I've been shot at in Iraq and Afghanistan. So this is all nothing. You know what I mean? Like this is all nothing compared to what I've gone through and what I've dealt with. So I can smile oftentimes in situations that are tough. And although that being said, like I am acknowledging it's been a roller coaster, and oftentimes I've struggled with like, well, what's going on? What am I doing? Where are we going? But I'm resilient, and I see the long-term potential in all of this. And fundamentally, I really do believe I built the sport, and I created the games. Essentially, Greg created the methodology, and he gave me the ability to run with the sport, and I ran with it, and I'm really proud of that. And we've built a great team, and I'm excited to keep running with it into the future. And so, I'm in this for the long haul. So I'm excited.
Cool. Well, speaking of running and shooting, I got to get you out to an I-Core match in Morgan Hill, man. Have you
tried that?
Yeah, my fiance's dad shoots. He shoots Steel Challenge. He does some I-Core too. But he shoots mainly revolver, and he's gotten us out to a couple of matches in San Luis Obispo and Morgan Hill. So it's fun.
So I'm trying to get the Morgan Hill guys to start a USPSA club, because the USPSA is the type of competition I shoot, and someone I was talking to said they're trying to get a club set up there.
Right on.
So then you'd see me there.
Best of luck with that. It's not like you have anything else to worry about right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Dave, as always, we really appreciate the time. And I know I speak for a lot of people. I think I'm really excited about the future of the sport.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Well, thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys soon.